Well, Pasco, thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time, and it's wonderful to connect again.
Oh, a pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. So, look, the point of us being here today is just have a little chat about your company, the company that you're one of the founders of, Men's Circle, and a group that I'm a member of, and a group that I'm training to be a facilitator in because I'm incredibly passionate about the work that you guys are doing, and I've been really blown away by the work that you're doing. So why don't you just tell me and any listeners a little bit about your motivations for founding a Men's Circle?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Um, I guess it comes from my passion to improve the world. For a long time, I've been sort of trying to work out how I can have the most positive impact with the resources that I have. And I think part of that has been recognizing my own white middle class privileges and seeing that I do have an advantage in mindset, in finance, in freedom in a lot of ways. And that's taken me a kind of on a journey of doing other aspects of kind of progressive work, having a go at investigative journalism, creating positive journalism, and running a previous nonprofit to do with charity fundraising. But really, men's work came along in 2020, the famous year of lockdown, and I started an in-person group in London where we met up every week in a different London park. And yeah, and I facilitated our group, which was just my mates, in speaking, in talking openly about the challenges that we all had, and that we could relate and connect over as men. And that went really well, and we all really enjoyed that. And then it got too cold to meet outside, and we weren't allowed to meet inside. And during this time, my friend Steve was sort of simultaneously running an online group, and he tried to kind of rope me in at the beginning of 2020, but I actually was quite skeptical about whether this online space would be a place where you can do that kind of work, whether you can really connect with other people. But then circumstance meant that I wanted that. I couldn't meet outside anymore. And so, yeah, I joined this online group that he was running, really was pleasantly surprised at the depth of connection that was possible there. And started facilitating a group there with him, and eventually it became clear that he had this vision for more of an organization and more of a structure around it. And I was coming to a point with my last nonprofit that was coming to a close. It didn't quite reach the success that we hoped it would after 5 years, and I was left in a bit of an existential crisis, and thought, okay, maybe it's time to change and move on and do something different. And essentially Steve handed me the reins, and I transformed it from sort of mid 2021 into a formal organization, and been growing it with some other key men ever since, kind of building on this model, which at the core of it is these weekly sessions where men meet and are vulnerable with one another, and it's professionally facilitated and held, and men get to speak openly and without judgment, and in confidentiality. And then we recognize and invite leaders to take on our training. And now we train men like yourself, Graham, to become leaders and facilitators in this work, and to grow the capacity of our community in this movement.
Thank you. That's really helpful description there. And I suppose the question that comes up for me is, well, first of all, it's really clear from what you just said and from what I know of speaking to you, you're really mission driven. You really do want to change the world in a positive way, and really that's at the center of everything that you do. Why men's work? Why men's circle? What was the thing specifically about this type of work that you felt is so important right now in the world?
So the work I was doing before was in the charity sector, and I think one of the big takeaways I got from that 5 years of effort was that many or perhaps maybe most charities work in dealing with the consequences of problems. The analogy I often use is an overflowing bath. So I think the majority of charities do an incredible job of mopping up the floor of this overflowing bath. And there are less, or not so many, that are working closer to the tap, to turning off the tap. And I think once I came across men's work and realized how close to the human soul and trauma and inner world, and that work, it really, I recognized that actually that was going to have a kind of more profound, wider, and potentially more impactful, positive impact. So I think that was the reckoning really that I came to. Like, I want to be working closer to that source of those problems, and I think specifically men, mainly because it's my experience, and so it's what I know, and I felt like I was had the kind of right, I guess, to work in that space, and had that shared experience, and wanted to work on myself primarily too. And that's the joy of this work, is that every day I get to work on my own self-development, and I think men also, because so many men sit in such strategic and arguably, or not arguably, dominant positions across the world. And so if we're able to shift something in men that progresses equality, that progresses listening, that progresses empathy and kindness, then my feeling is that is a real kind of arrowhead, if you like, or spearhead of society. So many men hold positions of power that their influence, their change of inner world will impact a wide range of the external world.
And yeah, I love that. That's really helpful. Thank you. And I have been really transformed by inner work over the years, and I think for some people, for some men, it's quite a confusing concept. What would you say to someone who was feeling a bit confused by the concept of inner work and what it means in the context of a men's circle to engage in inner work of any kind?
I think in its simplest form, when we talk about inner work, it's like when you're on your own, you have thoughts in your head, and you have feelings, and you might experience those thoughts and feelings as yourself, or they might be unclear or confusing, or they might misrepresent you. So you might be feeling sad and you might not know why, or you might not be able to get out of bed and you don't know why, or you might be really angry because something's happened and you don't know why, or you think you know why. And so I think a key part of what a men's circle enables is for you to think out loud and have permission to do that, and bring those thoughts that sort of could ruminate in your head, or you have a lack of understanding around, into an environment which is designed for listening. And so you've got at least, 6 other men who are there to listen, to witness your thoughts, to not judge them, and to help you dissect them a little bit, to help you understand them. And so often, actually, I come to a better understanding when I just talk them out loud. There's suddenly a separation, and I can hear myself saying my thoughts, and then just through doing that, I come to a better understanding. And then the other element is kind of how other men, when they listen, can hold up a mirror for you. They can reflect those thoughts, those feelings, ask you questions that help you understand some of those thoughts or feelings. They can relate to those thoughts and say, oh yeah, I think about that sometimes too, or oh yeah, no, I feel that sometimes too. And so you can just feel more normal, more human in sharing. There's that kind of phrase of like a problem shared is a problem halved. And I don't know if it's always that accurate, but I've certainly experienced, and I think many of our men do experience, that it helps. It helps to talk. It helps to get it off our chests.
Yeah, I agree, and that's been my experience as well. If not half, then it definitely takes a slice of the problem, a sliver at the very least. And just to add to that, I would say that my experience of being in a men's circle is that just the very act of saying thoughts out loud enables me to come up with new perspectives on them. And you kind of alluded to that. And I often find that when in a circle, I'll begin talking and I have no idea where I'm going to go, and I just sort of follow the flow of it. But through that process of talking, and there's something about, in my experience, of multiple people listening that's very powerful, because I work with a coach, I work in a one-to-one environment, and but there's something about like lots of different people listening and not that focus on like the individual person that really enables, for me anyway, a sense of freedom, a sense of liberation from the thoughts and the feelings, and an ability to just engage with them in a different way, which a lot of times just enables me to come up with my own solutions, which is seems quite magic, really, in my experience.
Yeah, and I think you just made me think of what I used to do before a men's circle, which was journaling. I've journaled, kind of on and off 6 years, I think, or 7 years, and that's always been my process of getting my thoughts out, and that's been really helpful. It's kind of that same externalization, and in that same way, you get to read back and look at your inner thoughts on paper and make sense of them, and it kind of makes more sense as you get it down. And even if you don't read it back, just getting it out, I think, helps.
Yeah, I agree. That's been my experience as well. So lovely to hear you articulate that. One of the things I've spoken to a number of people about men's circle, and many people are open. Some are curious, others are closed. I think, in my personal experience, those that are curious but not willing or closed have a sense of fear that it's going to involve sort of sharing or oversharing, or that they're going to be forced into positions of doing things that they just don't want to do. Like, is that something that you encounter as well? And if so, like, what do you say to those people typically?
I guess I would say, I'm trying to think if that has come up. What I find more common is that there are men who don't think it's for them, and I think one perception we have is that it's for men that need help, men in crisis, men who have had a mental breakdown and need somewhere to chat. And don't get me wrong, we invite that too, and some men come in that kind of time in their life where they've had a crisis. They might have lost someone close to them, they might have broken up with a partner, they might have lost a loved one or a pet or something like that, or a job. And I guess what I say to those people, and I know this isn't your question, what I say to those people is that it's about mental resilience, right? You don't go to the gym when you find out your arm doesn't work. You go to sustain your health. You go to create, strength and resistance and resilience in your body. And it's the same in a men's circle. It's a practice. I always come back to what it is we're practicing. We're practicing self-awareness. We're practicing emotional intelligence. And those things we build like muscles. We get better at sharing, we get better at dissecting our thoughts, we get better at naming where emotions are in our physical body and in our physical experience. And it is kind of like a dojo or a practice arena where it's a safe container to make mistakes, say things that actually we didn't quite think through, without judgment, where we can be called out in a kind, compassionate way, where we don't risk losing a relationship for saying the wrong thing or for speaking out or thinking out loud. And then we can go out into the real world and use those skills to express how we are being or feeling in a moment, to practice giving feedback to others and express our needs or our boundaries, or just simply listening, practicing our listening skills. Each of our circles, everyone's listening, or should be, 80% of the time. They're only speaking themselves about 20% of the time. So it's a good practice for that. I want to come back to your question. So a resistance, it was some men have a resistance to
just feeling like it's going to be a place where they're going to be forced to answer questions they don't want to answer, or be asked to do things that they don't want to do. What does it involve? What's going to be expected of me, kind of thing. That's right. Yeah, a bit of a fear of the unknown, I suppose, to encapsulate it in a better way. Exactly. Yeah. Well, one of our principles, so we have 10 principles that we run the organization and each of our circles by, is by invitation, which means, you or a man as an individual has to consent and has to agree and gets to choose ultimately whether they engage. And that's really important, particularly when a man is just trying it out or coming for the first time. And so there isn't an expectation that you'll engage. You might just want to listen for the first circle that you come to, and men do that, and that's welcomed. And what we find is that the vast majority, 99% of men that come through and try our circles, actually, even if they are really sure about not wanting to share at the start of the circle, by the end, 99% of them will share because they feel moved to, because they feel encouraged to, because they actually experience a space where everyone else is being vulnerable, they're showing up and sharing. So yeah, I would say there's no pressure. You can come and just listen. That's really welcome. And then you'll get a sense of what men talk about, what is shared, because there is a sense of mystery. I think there's the unknown part is, what do men actually talk about? And they talk about
the default is careers, because I think it's really easy for us to talk about work. I think that's what we talk about in the pub. We talk about relationships, family relationships, personal, romantic relationships, friendships. Men also talk about their mental well-being, their physical well-being. They talk about their diet. They talk about their dads. They talk about their mums. They talk about their siblings. They talk about things that happened in the past. They talk about things that might happen. They talk about their children. You know, it's really a space for self-direction. So that's what I would also say to these men, is that you're in charge. Ultimately, it's self-development. It's in the name. We are the men's self-development club. The emphasis is on you. You choose how to use the space. If you want to say just how your day was, then that's welcome. You know, if you want to talk about your trauma as a child, that is welcome. You know, it's a space where you get to choose how you use it. You get to choose what kind of feedback you want, if any. Yeah, it's your space.
Yeah, thank you. That answers the question perfectly. You mentioned earlier about, you know, the weekly circles where people get together, where we get together online and share. What other types of events and things can people expect? I mentioned a retreat, I think, earlier that I attended, which I thought was wonderful. What else can anyone join and expect in addition to the weekly sessions where it's sharing, and what do you have planned?
Yeah, great question. So we have themed circles. That's something that all the members are invited to once a month. So the last theme was money. I think the next theme circle is going to be on psychedelic journeys. And these themes are not chosen by me. They're chosen by our community of men, democratically. So that's one other element. We have this online community network, which is essentially like a Facebook group, but it's closed, it's private, it's confidential, it's just for our members. So that's a space where you can share links, you can ask questions of others, you can ask for support, you can connect with other members, you can find our events. We also hold monthly socials, which currently are just in London, because that's where about half of our community are. So just practically, that's where some of our men can meet up socially. And then we have, the retreats, as you talked about, Graham. And at the minute we're doing, our next retreat is in spring. And that's a chance for really to do more of the embodied elements of men's work. So bringing this type of resilience into the body, into the physical. So having more of a connection with other men physically in the same space, having more of a connection with nature, and taking more embodied physical practices and showing the impact that they can have on your internal world and then your external world. Your other question was, what do we have planned? So one of the things we have planned is some kind of more specialized talks, kind of webinar type setup. So having experts come in on certain topics. So slightly different to a theme circle. A theme circle is where we would speak, each man would actually speak on a certain subject, whereas a kind of webinar would be that there would be an expert on a particular subject, probably more specific. So it might be something like trauma awareness, for example, or it could be relationship to your son, perhaps, or something very specific. So we're in the planning of having those regularly. Another thing that we've got in the pipeline is bringing this work into the business world. And actually that's what I'm doing next today. We've got our very first business circle this afternoon that I'm facilitating. And I don't think I can name the organization yet, but I will be, and we're really excited about that element of this work of bringing this type of trust building and mental resilience building and vulnerability into the workspace, and the impacts that it can have in a space where you wouldn't typically have this kind of have this. Yeah
Great. I mean, so much coming up and so much already on offer and so much new stuff coming up, and it's very impressive to see and very exciting, I suppose. And to see the community growing all of the time is wonderful, which I suppose makes me wonder, where do you want to take this? What's the long-term goal for Men's Circle, if there are any?
This is very timely because actually on Friday we're exactly a year old, which is so it's quite nice to have this kind of review. In a way, it's really it's helping me sort of frame it in a timeline. Well, the next step is to formalize a step further, to share the accountability. So we're building a more formalized leadership team. That's one of the sort of short-term plans. We're also going to be taking on a bit of funding, so that I can go full-time on the project, and Lee can also go part-time. So they're kind of short-term goals. Longer term, it's about developing this business circles approach, and training people like yourself, Graham, who are becoming facilitators with us to take this work into that world, and just really getting much better at what we're doing now, creating a sustainable model. This time next year, I really want us to be in a position where financially what we're doing is self-sustaining. So actually that we're at a point where I can take a wage from the organization rather than a loan, and pay other team members. And then longer term, much longer term, there's been quite a bit of talk with myself, other team members, but also women in the kind of women's development and space of creating women's circles under the kind of same model, and eventually mixed circles, and kind of working on this piece of trust between men and women. And there's like a huge amount of work to be done there. And what we're recognizing is that there is value to there being men only space. There's value for there to be women only space. And then there's this coming together that can also happen. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but there's progression, there's trust to be built, there's vulnerability, there's listening to be had both directions. That feels like where we're going at the minute.
Yeah, lots of wonderful ideas there, and very inspiring to hear all of the plans, and inspiring to hear how far you've come already. I mean, my own experience of attending sessions and the retreat has been that, it's really brought a new dimension to my self-development, to my growth, to my healing. I'm someone that invests heavily in my own well-being, meditation and breath work and all the rest of it daily. I work with a coach, and love self-development myself, but it's just the power of the circle and what it brings out, and to develop and grow and heal in community in that way with other men has just opened up new parts for me, and I'm really, really enjoying my time doing it, and I'm really excited to be coming along on the journey and seeing where you take this. It's really exciting.
Yeah, oh mate, pleasure to have you. We're very lucky to have you.
thank you. It's kind of you to say. And so look, anyone listening to this that's like, they want to get involved in either the circle, or they're interested in the corporate side of things, and they want to get in touch, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you, or find out more about the circle?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to join or give it a try, then we offer a 4-week free trial, sort of no commitment. And you can just go to our website, which is menscircle.club, or you can even just search Men's Circle, and through the power of SEO, we're at the top, which is great. And then if you're interested in the kind of more corporate or business circles that we're beginning to offer, then I'd recommend you reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the place for that. And I'm either look for Men's Circle or for Pasco, and you'll find me.
Awesome, great. Well, I really appreciate you. I appreciate everything you do. I admire deeply the community that you've built, and the ambition that you have to take this thing to the next level and beyond. You've created something really special, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Graham.
See you soon, buddy.
See you.